What's up, fam? Welcome to Lazy Booking Live on atdradio.com, coming from all of our own Real Talk studios. We are live on Thursday night. We're brought to you by our doctor, Dr. Paul Vidal at Specialized Physical Therapy. He's the best in the business, and you can check him out in Burlington, Cherry Hill, and Princeton, New Jersey. You can also find him on the web, specializedphysicaltherapy.com. No appointment necessary. Go and check out the doc. We're also brought to you by Ambuck Services. You need gutter guards, gutter cleaning, tree trimming, deck installation, restoration. Summertime's here. Things are opening up. Barbecues are going to be starting, guys. Get your house in summer order, in presentable order. Check out our boys at ambuckservices.com. Let them know that the fam sent you from A2D, and you get 20% off. Our topic of conversation is irrelevant at this point, unfortunately, because we had to call an audible on the show this week, and we'll explain that in 1 minute. However, we're also brought to you by Play QB54. QB54, the best tailgating game out there, guys. Check it out at playqb54.com. Use the promo code NONOTES. Get 10% off of your purchase. A great backyard game to have. Andy's face looks really stupid right now. I don't know why. I don't know, man. You're making a weird face. It's kind of messing with me right now.
Jeez, just right out the gate.
And listen, shout out to our boys over at Philly Drinkers, guys, where you can pick up your A2D merch, phillydrinkers.com, 43 items of A2D merch. And I'm talking, it's good-looking merch, guys. We're not talking your basic Joe Schmo promotional stuff. You got the Philadelphia Quarterback Factory shirt, which if you use a promo code A2D for that, you will get 25% off of that shirt. Not your whole purchase order, guys, but that shirt. But we got everything we got tumblers there, guys. We got swim shorts. We got show shirts. You want it in this very ring shirt? I don't know who does, but if you happen to want one, you can get one there. If you want a Birds of a Feather shirt, which is coming up a little bit later after us, because we had the Chris Pronger interview this weekend, and Niche Night was swapped a little bit. But you can get that. You can get your Hockey Happy Hour shirts. You can get your Lazy Booking shirts, your Fix shirts. Every show on this station has a shirt, including the returning Kicking It Stateside. Welcome back to those boys. Let's say hello to them. But yeah, listen, the topic at hand. We were supposed to have Bill Alfonso on the show this evening. Unfortunately, and we talked to Bill. We were about 5 minutes out from getting the show started. Bill was with us. And there's a pretty bad storm in Tampa right now. So similar to what we had last week with the Chris Pronger interview, Thursdays seem to not be our nights the last couple of weeks. We had a tornado that came through our area and knocked out a lot of power and some issues. So due to technical difficulties from a storm that's ongoing in Tampa as we speak, Bill will not be able to join us tonight. However, and he's heartbroken about it, guys. I got to tell you. Yeah, get your weekly roundup shirt.
And no one wants those shirts either.
Shameless plug, you bastards. Use my airtime to plug yourselves. No, I'm kidding. And I got to tell you guys, Bill was really disappointed about not being able to come on, today. He has a lot of really great stories. I've been talking to him. I'm going to be talking to him again this week. But I think we're going to do a little different route. We didn't want to try to force something on you guys. And honestly, we tried. Bill tried to from sunny Cocoa Beach. Shut up, Greg. We tried to work through those issues, which is why we're on later. Even now, what's it? 11:36. We tried for about a half an hour with Bill to get things situated.
I'm sorry. It's what time?
7:36. Sorry. Shut up, dumbass. Don't speak.
You're the one that said 11, you moron.
Don't speak out of turn.
Well, to be fair, though,
good shit.
I think time's a little different though where Andy is. So
even
two time zones.
How many time zones?
You're 2 hours, right?
No, I'm 1 hour. It's 6:37 here because I actually know how to read a clock.
Well, you can't speak very well, so I'll give you that. You can have the clock. Anyway, we do apologize, guys, but we can guarantee you we're going to have Bill on next week. We're going to do it by phone. So I'm going to be at a different location so we can make that happen. And this is going to be a good one. So stick with us. But we're calling an audible, and we're going to give you a short show tonight because the show must go on. And it is the 4-year anniversary of the passing of Dusty Rhodes. I'm joined by my every week tag team partner, Mr. Matty Sensuti. They haven't found a way to break up this tag team yet, Matt.
No, I don't think they will. We're going to be one of those few that survives.
Nope, the Ginger Club is still going, bro.
Yep. Too sweet.
And unfortunately, we're welcoming Dumbass over here from in this very ring.
Okay.
Listen, you started shooting shots, bro.
You're the one that started this. Let's be very clear.
When I am doing a sponsor read and you're making this face,
I honestly didn't even realize it. Didn't even realize it.
When you go back and you watch the beginning of the show, you're going to see the face I'm talking about.
I'm going, damn it!
It wasn't quite that face.
Oh, and by the way,
I
actually thought of Andy the moment I started watching NXT TakeOver in your house because I saw Todd Pettingill. And I was like, hey, Andy Pettingill.
Cute, real funny. Real funny.
Great,
laugh it up, assholes.
It was pretty great. It was pretty great. I'm not going to lie. I prefer him more as Fritz Hendricks, but, whatever.
That's the best one. That's the best one.
That's great.
It's so good.
This is what happens when you give Ryan way too much time.
Forget Dusty. Let's just have a roast of Andy for the next 20 minutes.
Bring everybody. You don't have enough people.
No, yeah, we have to get Tom on here. We have to get Ralphie on here just to see if it turns into a roast of him. We got to do all kinds of things.
It would start out a roast of me, and then very slowly it would change into a roast of Ralph.
Yeah, well, Matty, unfortunately, Ralph is very busy, so he won't be able to.
Oh well,
there it is.
Playing GTA most likely, but okay.
Listen, Ralphie's stepping in for me tonight on the Birds of Feather draft. So. Ralphie's he's in the war room. He's doing draft preparation right now.
$50
good to go. He's leaving the Jason Peters hater Ralph version at home. He assured me he's going to come with his A game tonight. Right.
Can't even keep a straight face. We don't even need to see the camera on for that.
Frank is not mad at that GIF. He loves it. GIF.
Oh, God, that's amazing.
So,
shut up, Martian boy.
So again, programming alert, guys. We apologize for the issues that we had this week, but we can assure you that next week we will have the manager of champions, Bill Alfonso. We will have the manager of champions, Bill Alfonso. He is really looking forward to it. Like I have to say, we've had a lot of guests on here. When you talk about enthusiasm and wanting to make sure that everything is right, I think, he agreed and we agreed. We didn't want to half-ass anything with you guys. We didn't want to have his audio cutting in and out, our audio cutting in and out on him. So we're going to do it the right way. We're going to give it to you next week. We're going to give you a full hour, 60 minutes of Bill Alfonso. So, boys, 4-year anniversary since the passing of one of the greatest of all time, Mr. Dusty Rhodes. Crazy how time flies. And when you really think about it, was it the same year that Piper passed away or was it the following year?
I think it was the same year. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure it was the same year.
I think that would be the anniversary. It's either the 3 or 4 year anniversary of Piper.
I'm trying
to think as well.
Because I think it happened the same year the Hogan controversy happened. And then Rowdy, I think, died a couple days after he said, hey, let's give Hogan a break. I think that's what happened.
So Dusty dies on June 11th, 2015. Roddy dies on July 31st, 15. So about 6 weeks later.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought so because I actually was in Florida and I remember waking up and getting the alert that Roddy Piper passed away. So it's crazy that how 4 years passes and these guys, come up. But listen, we're going to talk about the legacy of Dusty. Maybe we'll throw in Piper too. Who knows? Why not? We got a few minutes to talk. But I just want to ask, first and foremost, guys, does it feel odd that 4 years has passed since Dusty is gone from this earth?
It really does because, when you sit back and you think of what has happened in the world of professional wrestling over the last 4 years specifically, so much has changed, and it's a totally different landscape than when Dusty left it. Look at where people are. That NXT class from 4 years ago is primarily your main roster right now. Number one, so and then Cody's not even with the company. He's created his own company, and that's been flourishing. And Dustin's doing the same thing. He's over there in AEW, killing it over there. So the landscape has changed so much and so drastically that it really does feel a lot longer than 4 years. Since Dusty's been gone, but at the same time, you look at the foundation of that landscape. Dusty Rhodes is that foundation. Dusty Rhodes built the industry that we have right now.
Maddie?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Sometimes you think like you forget, like, and I don't mean forget in the sense of like, they were forgettable. No, in the sense of you honestly feel like, these guys were so timeless and so classic. You feel like they could never die. Like these guys are freaking superheroes, and you forget like, holy shit, yeah, he did pass away. Maybe it's that side of me that says I don't want to, not in denial, but just like I don't want to be reminded of it, just like that they're not here no more. But it's one of those things of like, you feel like, man, how could these guys die? These guys are just, they're titans, and it's a shame that everybody has to go at some point, But I would say, after 4 years of Dusty being here, it's kind of crazy to think about how, Dusty was a guy who always had that vision of the big show, the big everything, and he was a major part in Jim Crockett promotions and pay-per-views and the big free events that they would have, like the Clash of Champions and stuff like that, War Games and everything. To see, his son open up his own wrestling company and show that he has the ability to book. It's just like, it's crazy to think about. It's just like, it's almost like Dusty passed on his power onto Cody. I mean, because with what Cody's been booking in AEW, there's really not much to complain about there. He's done a great job with that.
Oh no, I can find a way.
I'm sure you could.
No, I absolutely could.
Yeah, it's very crazy how time has passed with that, and Dusty left such an amazing legacy. And again, you guys kind of touched on it. You look at what Cody's doing, and what he's learned, and obviously Dustin. His legacy lives on. But that's the thing: his legacy doesn't just live on there. Dusty was such a figure. You can go back to his in-ring performance and his in-ring resume, and you look at promos, iconic promos like Hard Times. And you go back and you look at his classic feuds with Ric Flair with the Four Horsemen. Even when you go to WWE, he's a guy who took polka dots, and it was almost, is this a joke or is this serious? But he managed to take that gimmick and still be one of the hottest guys in the company, and feuded with guys like Macho King at that time, Randy Savage, and leave a memorable mark even in his brief WWF run. So, but I look at his legacy that transcends that. His fingerprints are all over the Monday Night Wars. His fingerprints are all over, to this day, we're still seeing them. NXT, the early years of NXT, the emergence of NXT. I mean, hell, look at Tommy Dreamer. He's one of the few guys that basically seems to have an open door for any organization he wants to show up in, and he still has polka dots on his tights. It's just insane, to think about, and the 4 years that's gone past. So I'll go with Andy first here. Andy, what you grew up a little bit later than you guys both grew up a little bit later than me, but can you guys remember what your first real Dusty Rhodes memory is? We'll go to Andy first and then Matt.
Man, my first real Dusty Rhodes memory. He was in WCW at that time that I remember. Like, one of the first times I remember seeing him was in WCW, not knowing who he was or why he was such a big deal. But it probably wouldn't have, like, one I can really say, oh, I knew that was Dusty Rhodes, was probably his I have to remember, when was his Hall of Fame induction? Was that 04?
It was a while ago, I can tell you that. I don't know. You're stat guy, Ritz. What the hell,
That's
man?
what I'm looking for. Hold on.
Who?
I don't think
We
it
bring
was
you here
04.
for one reason, Andy,
Shut up.
and it's to
I'm
get
sorry.
the
He
freaking
was
stats.
he was
right.
inducted in 07. He was inducted
Okay.
in 07. So it was probably his return in 05 is where I really kind of learned who he was. By that point, I've watched
Really?
older
Ooh.
stuff. Yeah, that was my first time seeing him on TV. Everything else was YouTube and this stuff, and I never understood or appreciated how important Dusty Rhodes was. I always knew though that this was a big name. Dusty Rhodes was a big name in the late '80s, yeah, in all the territories. So my appreciation for Dusty was later in life after he got out of the ring. That's more where I learned and who he was and appreciated it.
Chris, we did see that. Chris says, "Did you see they just combined the writing teams for Raw and SmackDown?" That's breaking news. We'll have a chance to talk about that after we talk about Dusty, because again, we're doing we're doing a freelance show here, and if you're just tuning in, again, we apologize. We were supposed to have the manager of Champions, Bill Alfonso, on with us. Unfortunately, there is I almost said tornado. That was Chris Pronger last week. There is a storm in Tampa where he is located, which unfortunately he was with us 5 minutes before we went on the air at 7 o'clock, and actually it was like 2 minutes before. And the audio and the feed and everything, we had some major issues due to the storm. So we can assure you we will have Bill on next week with us. He's looking forward to it. He's very, very sorry that we couldn't get him on today. But we will promise that one way or another we will have Bill on next week. Maddie, I'm gonna defer to you now. Can you talk about your earliest or early memories of Dusty?
It would be when he showed up in WWE on Raw, first time in long, like actually first time ever because he was in WWE before Raw ever was a thing. But yeah, that was my first real memory of Dusty because at the time, when I was watching WCW as a kid, Dusty wasn't really on all that much, and those were like the dying days of WCW, and I didn't really watch WCW that much anyway because it was terrible. But that was my first real exposure to Dusty, and I always knew that he was a big part of it, and I always knew he was a big deal, but I had never really like gone back too much and researched him at the time. And after he had some time and he had that rivalry with Randy Orton that led to the bull rope match at the Great American Bash, during Orton still doing that Legend Killer thing, at the end of the day, I got a chance to then go back and realize, not only was he a big deal with, just himself, but, he's one of the major reasons why Ric Flair was such a huge star in his day, because he was the perfect yin to the yang for Ric Flair. You had the guy who, when you look at the two major rivals at that time for the NWA World Title, Flair had a lot of great rivals for it, but one of the best ones was him and Dusty, because they were just two opposites. Dusty was the common man, Flair was the limousine Ryan jet flying, like that's what he was. So it was.
Yeah, I mean, son of a plumber, guys, son of a plumber.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wine and dined the kings and queens, and slept in the streets and ate pork and beans, or however that
Yeah.
was. I don't know. I'm normally more prepared for this, but I'll say, and I guess that's the generational gap, which is why this is such a fascinating conversation to have. For myself personally, my Dusty years were the polka dots to start because I was born in '85. So I wasn't as smartened up, obviously, to NWA and WCW. They were kind of converting at that point to WCW. I was of the Steiner brothers, Lex Luger, El Gigante, Barry Windham, Johnny B. Bad. That's my early WCW years. The Hollywood Blondes, Flying Brian Pillman. But for me with Dusty, I can say this. maybe not as much of the in ring career that I was able to appreciate of his prime years, but I can say that when we talk about living through those Monday Night Wars, and I was, at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, when that really hit its stride, and Dusty having his fingerprints all over a lot of that with Eric Bischoff. Um, the dude's a legend. He's an icon. And for me, I guess my really earliest memories were Dusty and Sapphire against Sherry and Macho King. But I'm sad that I didn't get to experience just a little taste live of the Dusty Flair feud.
That would have been insane.
It's interesting, guys. I've asked this question on baseball shows on this station, so I'm going to ask, or I'm going to just bring it up here. One of the questions I've asked the guys, is there one player, if there's one player or one game in the history of like professional baseball that you could attend, or one player that you always wanted to see live, who would it be? I don't know for sure if it would be 100% be it, but I'll tell you, there's a debate there for me. It would be in the top 1, 2, or 3 of seeing Flair and Dusty in its prime, man. Flair and Dusty in its prime during those NWA days in Greensboro or Charlotte, anywhere around there. So, yeah, it's crazy. Let's talk about Dusty's legacy now moving forward. We know about his in-ring career. We know about the legendary promos, the mic work. He was a little bit of a bigger guy, but he managed to become such a storyteller. So I want to know, looking at the legacy now, guys, how do you look at Dusty Rhodes and his lasting fingerprints on the business? I'll go Maddie to start first.
I mean, I think, with his lasting legacy, obviously you could see it in his sons, and the way that they perform and the way that they, you can tell that there's when you saw just the natural charisma that both of them have, it's like it comes from Dusty, because Dusty had that natural charisma, whether he was a heel in his early days with Dick Murdoch or, when he turned babyface and became, the common man, it's just like Dusty was such a superstar because of his charisma and the way he can draw people in. Dustin and Cody have been able to do the same thing. I mean, think about it. We look at Cody when he was doing that Stardust gimmick. We were praying to God that Vince would just stop putting stupid shit on him. But finally, he made the most of what he could out of that. And then eventually, when he left, he became one of the biggest stars that left WWE at that time. And whether it was because he had to rebuild or not, but he went to Japan and he set Japan on fire. He joined the Bullet Club, and then he went to ROH, became the world champion there, opens up AEW, is the biggest star there besides, Chris Jericho or what have you, and Dustin, just a natural talent, he took to the ring like that, and he didn't have to work at it. He just naturally knew how to do it. It's just like, I'm pretty sure if anybody saw him, it's just like, I don't need to teach him anything. He already knows what he's doing. That's crazy when you think about it. It's like, you see that legacy there with his two sons. It's just like, it's amazing. And you see the legacy with a lot of guys who are inspired by him. They try to cut promos and try to get that emotion like he does, and try to get people to love him and be, so supportive of him, just like Dusty was able to do with everybody.
And Matty talks about it, right? Matty talks about the Rhodes brothers, Dustin and Cody. And while, yes, that will forever be Dusty's legacy, I truly, within my heart of hearts, think, while, yes, NXT is Triple H's baby and it was something that he kind of came out with, NXT, that class, those people from like 2013 to 2015 when he passed, those guys in there, that's Dusty's legacy. What he taught, his teachings that he gave those people, those stars, that's the legacy that will forever live on in this business, and especially the way it's shaped right now. You look how, and I mentioned it when we opened the show, the main roster is made up of mostly of that class, of those people that Dusty trained and helped with and worked with them on their promos. So every time somebody grabs a microphone and cuts a quote unquote hard times promo, that's Dusty's legacy. AEW has their gorilla position is called the Dusty position, right? So that's a nice little homage to him. But anytime you pick up a microphone, whether you're in WWE, Impact, AEW, or any other promotion out there, and you cut a promo that resonates with people, that people talk about weeks later, that is the Dusty Rhodes legacy that will forever live on.
Yeah, his kids are an obvious choice with this, but I'm with Andy. I look beyond that. I mean, you look at that NXT period, that era, that put NXT on the map, officially made it a third brand. And you look at the people that came out of that. I mean, there are a number of people who we're talking already could be Hall of Fame potential talent. And you hear all of them talk, and they all honor Dusty and talk about how pivotal Dusty was. If you went back and you watched that FCW documentary, how involved with FCW Dusty was in helping people to discover who their character is and refine that character to fit them, that they can maximize that experience and their promo work. I just think it's a legacy that you leave behind. As much as the in-ring stuff means so much, I think when you can give back to the business, and when you look at the NXT legacy, when you look at after his post in-ring career, a lot of the talent he worked with in WCW, Booker T is a name that comes out there. It's impressive. It's very, very impressive to know that he was able to leave his fingerprints on so many people. And I think, and I truly believe this, whether you love or you hate a guy like Hunter, I think Hunter is that same kind of guy. He's cut from that cloth, where as much as he has to give to the ring and inside the ring, there's so much there. And some guys are just born to be creative leaders. And I feel like Dusty was one of those guys. I feel that Triple H is one of those guys. And I do believe that Cody is one of those guys. But again, I mean, you look at his sons, look at Dustin and everything that he's done with that Goldust character. And, obviously everything he's doing with Cody and AEW and everything that Cody's doing now. It's impressive. So with that, let's just talk about some random stuff that has come up. Obviously, let's talk about this that came up today, right before we went on the air, actually. Or was it while we were supposed to be on the air, it popped up. But since we had a few minutes. And again, if you're just joining us, Bill Alfonso was supposed to be with us. Unfortunately, because of a storm in Tampa, we had Bill on with us. The feed wasn't good. So we discussed with Bill after about a half an hour of trying to get him on. We realized the weather just wasn't going to allow it to happen, guys. Same thing with Chris Pronger for us last Thursday, where we ended up having that on Tuesday. So, but yeah, so Bill Alfonso will be on with us next week, guaranteed. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on A2D Radio on Lazy Book. He's very, very sorry that he couldn't be on, but he's looking forward to making it up to you guys next week. But listen, the announcement comes through. WWE is now combining the SmackDown and Raw creative. What does this mean? This means that Paul Heyman will now no longer be the head of creative for Monday Night Raw. Bruce Pritchard will take over dual responsibilities, which probably means a little bit of a slower death for Something to Wrestle, which sucks because I do love that show and podcast. But I just kind of want to get your guys' reactions to it. So Paul Heyman is still with the company. He's back to just being an in-ring talent. But I want to get your guys' reactions to the news. If you want to talk about, your opinion on the Paul Heyman era as it has been over the last, year and a half, years?
Not even
You're
that.
welcome to do. It's got to be a year at least.
I don't think so. Absolutely not. I could be wrong, but we'll find out. Maddie, you start. I'm gonna find this out.
Okay. Looking back on this, I mean, them combining both writing teams. I mean, we did see them let go of the one SmackDown writer, and then after that, then they're combining the teams. I guess at this point, it's not just. A part of me thought at first that maybe they're doing this because of the pandemic still, and that's why they're combining the writing teams. But another part of me says, but at the same time, too, maybe they're also feeling like, well, because both shows essentially, they have so many similarities to them. It's like there's no point. There's no real major difference. So you can just put them together. Why have a whole bunch of people on payroll when both shows are not all that different? It's like, I'm not going to pay two writing teams to write the exact same thing,
I do. I can't agree with that point. The shows are very different.
Very
Very,
different.
very, very different. We're not. I think there's a reason that Paul Heyman is no longer writing for Raw. Let's just be honest here, or has the creative control. Andy, just under a year.
Yes,
June 27th of last year
correct.
was when the announcement was made that Paul Heyman was going to be taking over creative.
It was Bischoff that was announced later in the year.
Correct. Yeah, Maddie, I can't agree. I can't disagree with you anymore on that, buddy. I agree with your assessment of not needing to have two creative teams, or at least a head of creative, because I still think they have two different creative teams. But I can't agree with you that both shows are the same. I don't even think they're close to the same. I'm going to let Andy give his opinion first because I don't want to bite anybody's head off. And if I do want to bite somebody's head off, Maddie, I want it to be Andy. So I want to let him hang himself. I want him to hang himself first.
Once it's going to be me. No. As far as like the decision being made, it's very weird when you read the language, right? I just had the language pulled up. When you read the language in this press release that they do, Paul Heyman will concentrate on his role as an in-ring performer. So what that tells me is one of two things are going to happen. Paul's either going away from TV until Lesnar comes back, or Lesnar's coming back, or they're putting him with somebody new. Right? Because why would you phrase it, he's going to concentrate on his role as an in-ring performer when he hasn't been on TV since, 36? Oh, no, well, yeah, he was on TV, Money in the Bank. But I mean, actually out there at ringside. He wasn't out there at ringside since, 36?
Money in the Bank counts.
That's fair. No. I completely agree, but I look at Money in the Bank because it was the cinematic a little bit differently. I'm talking like just strictly at ringside on a week-to-week basis.
Counts, though.
Fight me, okay? That's what counts. But no, I mean, it's very interesting wording. As far as Bruce Pritchard taking over the role of being head of creative for both shows, doesn't bother me one way or the other. I have no opinion on it one way or the other. I like Bruce Pritchard. I like what he does. The Paul Heyman Raw era, especially lately, has felt more like old ECW shows where there's not real flow from start to finish. But that's just my opinion on that side of it. So I'm okay with Bruce taking it over because now you're going to see the same styles, but different stories and different dynamics within those stories. But it's going to have a consistency.
Do you think that with Paul focusing on his in-ring that Brock might make an appearance soon?
I just said that.
No, he's focusing on his in-ring performance. But we haven't seen him. We haven't seen Brock since WrestleMania.
I said one of two things are going to happen. Either Paul's going to go off TV until Heyman comes back, which means Heyman's coming back. Lesnar's coming back soon. Or they're going to put him with someone else. I started that rant with this.
Oh.
Did you turn your speakers off?
No, what it was the
What
wheels
the
were
hell
working in
just
my mind
happened?
of that when you said focusing on in-ring, so I was thinking to myself, okay, so now the wheels are turning and I'm tuning everything out. So
Well,
I'm
wake the
thinking like,
people up. Come
okay,
on.
either stable or Brock's coming back or something. I was just tuning you out, Andy.
Oh,
I'm
appreciate
sorry.
that.
Sorry.
Real kind of you. Why do I do this show?
Because you love to get destroyed by us.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
For me, I destroy you. Maddie just ignores you.
Clearly, just an ass kicking.
No, you know what, Andy? I'm with you though. I didn't even think about the possibility of having a larger presence on television. I don't think that that's what would be a decision maker, but I could see that as being like the fallout from this, or a part of the fallout. I know Paul. For one thing, Paul runs other businesses. He has his own business that he runs, the Heyman Hustle, all that stuff. Um, but even aside from that, there's been bright spots and massive failures with the Paul Heyman era. Let's be honest. We talked about the good that you get, the emergence of Ricochet, and Cedric Alexander was getting a push for a while. And you're seeing Apollo Crews now, who I know Paul Heyman is very high on Apollo Crews, which, I'm all for. That's one of those great Paul Heyman things. He has a great eye for certain guys. But then you get the negative, the Rusev Lashley feud that went on and on and on
And
and
on.
on and on.
Less
All right,
said
Mr.
about
Kennedy.
that.
You have that kind of stuff. I look at a lot of the positives too, when you talk about like the Messiah. I don't know how much Paul had his hands on that. I think a lot of that is Seth and it grew organically. Maybe you can look at Zelina Vega and Andrade, and maybe Paul had his fingertips on a lot of that stuff. But, overall, this is where I totally disagree with you, Maddie. I think that SmackDown has become a much better show. I'm with Andy. The continuity of Raw has not been there. This consistency of Raw has not been there. But I look at SmackDown, and maybe because it's a 2-hour show as well. And listen, we've had stupid stuff. We had dog food and stupid shit like that. And I'm not going to say that it's been a perfect show, but I really look at SmackDown. And particularly when you come out of WrestleMania, a lot of times the programming takes a massive nosedive. I think SmackDown has continued to maintain a high level. It's been much easier to get through than Raw, and it's not even because of the time difference. It's because it's a much better flowing program, and I have always been a Bruce Pritchard fan. There's a lot of things you don't even realize that Bruce was a part of over the years. That you realize when you realize everything, a lot of the creative that he was a part of, a lot of the creative that went off that he was against, you kind of can see the visionary that he is. When you look at the Broken Hardy thing in Impact, he was a part of that with Matt Hardy. And you're seeing the cinematic. They're with the cinematic elements now added to the programming, which I believe even with going back with fans eventually going back, whether it's 6 months, it's a year, it's 2 years, I believe the cinematic presentations will continue to be a part of WWE programming going forward in instances. I think that's right up Bruce's wheelhouse, man. He's a creative guy. And a lot of people sing the praises. He's Undertaker's boy. Undertaker loves him some Bruce Pritchard. He has loved working with Bruce over the years. I just look at it and I just think Bruce, go back to even in Impact. There's things, and I'm not even talking about the Hardys, things with AJ Styles' career over the years, and throughout his Impact run when Bruce was there, and some of these other guys, even then he worked with Russo in Impact, and a lot of the bad stuff was a Russo thing, and I don't think it's just him saying it because I've heard multiple accounts of Russo running that shit down, or
Shock.
Dixie getting in her own way. I just think Bruce is he's one of those guys. And honestly, guys, I don't know if you feel this way. Bruce had a lot of demons for a while, a lot of personal issues he had to work through and health issues. And I think it took him a long time to get to a place now to where he can be that creative leader that he is. And he's a visionary too. Look at a lot of the promos and stuff over the years, the vignettes in those 90s and early 2000s that he was involved in. I think with a clear head and better health now, I think Bruce is the ideal guy to take over the creative. And I think he's a guy that Vince trusts. And what's ironic now, and I want to know if you guys agree or disagree with this point. It's very rare that you have a person that both Vince trusts and the fans trust. And I think Bruce being able to get out of that what the fuck is he have there? A White
That's
Ranger? What a
the
nerd.
White Ranger.
What a nerd. But I think that when you can step back, White Ranger is cool though. But I think that when you can step back and you look at Bruce being able to get out of not be Vince's guy and be very candid on his podcast, really build a strong relationship with the wrestling fan base. And I'm talking about the Mark base, to where it's so rare. Man, that's not the face I expected to see when the White Ranger unmasked. Christ.
What can I say, man?
Put the mask back on. But I think that Bruce was able to build a lot of stock with the fans over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, to where the Mark base even trusts him and Vince trusts him. And I think that's a good thing for that company moving forward.
Yeah, and I also think too with Bruce, there's the familiarity with him, which is another thing that Vince is comfortable with. Like if he's like you were talking about with the trust that Vince has in him. You know, Vince is the type of guy. It's like if he's worked with him in the past and it was a good relationship, and yeah, they had their falling out and everything like that, and Bruce left. But the thing was that there was never that moment where there was WWE trying to go after Bruce Pritchard at any time. And there was never a time where – and Bruce, yeah, he spoke candidly about things, but it always seemed like Vince always had a soft spot for him. And there's some guys Vince does. Vince has a soft spot for him, and he can't hate them no matter what. And Bruce is one of those guys, and that comes from being a part of his inner circle and being part of the creative process for a long time. I mean, that first run he had it was forever. It's like it goes so far back. It's like I think that familiarity with him is one of the things that really makes Vince feel comfortable with him. And for the fans, knowing a lot of what he was a part of and the process that it was of talking with Vince on a daily basis about things, and what the idea was of storylines and angles, whether it was Russo who was writing the show at the time, or whether it was, what was his name that took over in the early 2000s after Russo left? He was on the Ruthless Aggression thing. What's his name?
Michael Hayes?
Well, Michael Hayes, but there was another writer.
Isn't his name like Brian something?
Something like that. Yeah, it's Brian. Either way.
I know who you're talking about. I can picture him.
Yeah, but point is that no matter who it was, Bruce worked with them. And Bruce, he worked with Vince. Having all that he was talking about through the storyline angles that we either grew up with or we remember or we think are infamous, him, like you said, speaking candidly about it, gave that trust. I think it's a win-win scenario for everybody, when you think about it. Because it's like, and
Brian Gerwitz.
Thank you.
There you go.
Dude, it was on the tip of my tongue, his name, too, and I couldn't think of it.
I couldn't think of his last name.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the familiarity helped Vince, bring him back and trust him. And as for the fans, now we know what Bruce had to deal with, not just personally, but also professionally, dealing with, the craziness of WWE every day. And it is craziness, every single day, writing, booking, coming up with angles or being a part of angles, it's just – it's amazing, the work that you built up in wrestling in a short time.
Andy, you want to respond to that before we get ready to sign off?
I mean, Matt kind of hit the nail on the head with it as far as like Pritchard. He's a safe bet. He's a safe option. He's someone that Vince trusts. So it's the right move for sure, right? Don't bring
So-
somebody else in. Just put it all under one banner. Appoint your lieutenants or whatever the hell you want to call them, and move on.
Yeah, I think separate creative teams, but having the same creative head is more productive that way.
Yes.
You can keep the continuity of not having guys jump show to show with one creative team trying to write two separate shows. But if you have one guy at the head steering the ship as the captain of each ship, those ships are going to go in one continuous direction. So I'm for it. We love Paul. We'll always love Paul and appreciate his creativeness, but the results haven't been there, and that's just the way it is.
I think Paul's the perfect example of if he could have time with an individual talent, or like an individual talents. Not to say that he didn't do a great job in ECW and other booking situations, but think of guys like Punk and stuff like that. He had a chance to individually work with guys like that. Whereas, when you work with him individually, it's like the rewards are right there. So I think it actually gives them more of a chance for him to possibly work individually with them.
Paul just needs to go down to the Performance Center and be the next Dusty down there with promo class and everything like that.
It could happen, guys. Again, we apologize, guys, for the audible, but I think we had a pretty good conversation about Dusty. And listen, we had breaking news to talk about, and it's actually wrestling related.
Gotta love it.
A lot of times Thursday we get the football or we get the MLB breaking news when it's hockey night and wrestling night. So, it's pretty good to actually have something relate to the content.
We can set that office chart to 0. Finally, the streak has ended.
It's over. But again, we apologize for the audible. Bill Alfonso was going to be joining us. Awesome guy. We're looking forward to having him next week. He's looking forward to coming on. You'll get a full 60-minute interview with Bill. I think we're going to tap into a phone line to make sure we don't have any issues with her, because they're going to have a lot of weather issues down there. And, Bill wants to make sure for us and for his audience that he gets on. So tune in next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have the manager of champions, ECW icon, legendary manager, Bill Alfonso. He'll be joining us to talk stories about refereeing in WCW, WWF. I know he's got some stories about Giant Gonzalez I'd love to hear about. He's going to talk about being with Taz, Sabu, Rob Van Dam, the match with Beulah McGillicuddy, and so much more. So we're going to talk to Bill next week. Make sure that you guys stay tuned here tonight. Hockey Happy Hour already took place, and if you missed it, go back. Awesome interview with former Flyers captain and Pro Hockey Hall of Famer, Mr. Chris Pronger. We talked to him on Tuesday night. You can go back, check it out on A2D, on all of our social media platforms and podcast platforms. We'll run down those in a minute. Check out In This Very Ring this Saturday. I believe I'll be joining Mr. Ritz and Butters. We're going to talk. We're going to talk.
We're going to do an NXT Takeover in Your House recap, and
which was awesome, by the way.
Absolutely, guys. And we're going to do a preview for WWE's Backlash.
Yeah, spoiler alert, guys. I grew up in the mid '90s. I remember the first In Your House pay-per-view. I fucking marked the whole time, and I'm gonna mark when we talk about it on Saturday. So spoiler alert.
This.
It was great, and I'm actually really excited to talk to Andy and Butters about that. So we'll discuss that. We'll preview Backlash coming up, and then listen. Stay tuned for all of our programming here. Tomorrow we have On the Road to Victory. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah.
Well, and don't forget, Birds of a Feather is coming on right after us.
I already promoted that, dickhead.
Well, don't forget to promote it again. It's your show, jackass.
I'll get to it in a minute, you asshole. Shut your mouth.
Were you tuning out Krill, Mandy?
In the Road to Victory on Friday.
On the
Saturday,
road, not in the road. Stupid.
Shut up. Mute his mic. Mute him. I don't even remember all the shows.
All right, so tomorrow you have On the Road to Victory. On Saturday, you're going to have Kicking It Stateside first thing in the morning.
When's the rundown, by the way?
No idea. I don't even think Zach knows. Jake and Steve are gonna bring you the weekly roundup later on in the evening. Right after that, we're gonna do In This Very Ring. Agree to disagree on Monday. Sports Hounds on no, I'm sorry. Agree to disagree on Sunday. Sports Hounds on Monday. Birds of
Mr.
a
Perfect
Feather.
over here.
Hey, I'm better than you. Birds of a
Birds
Feather
of a
on
Feather comes back
Tuesday.
next week. Birds of a Feather comes back on Tuesday next week. Regular time, regular
Can you
programming.
pick it up from here?
Yeah, shut your mouth.
Okay.
Wednesday, we might have the rundown. We'll see. Might have the rundown on Tuesday, maybe Thursday. We don't know. But Wednesday we're gonna have I'm assuming the Fix in the PM, another combined show, unless I'm wrong on
Yes,
that.
it's catching on.
Yeah. And obviously, again, next week we come back with Lazy Booking and Hockey Happy Hour back at our regular scheduled times. Lots to talk about with hockey too, Matty.
Oh,
So stay
yeah.
tuned, guys. Ralphie Delavecchia is going to be stepping in my place on Birds of a Feather next. He's going to be taking my team home by hiring my coaching
You
staff.
might be an actual better draft now.
Yeah, okay. You don't even know what you're talking about. Do me a favor. Go pull up when you chime in with your comments. Go pull up Wikipedia again for me so you can make sure you get your comments right.
I absolutely will.
I know you will, you bastard. But stay tuned. Tom and Mr. Brodo, they're going to be guest appearing again as we continue, and I think we're finishing up with this. Our draft series, off-season draft series on Birds of a Feather. Appreciate those guys, my guys, hopping over to Thursday so you guys were able to have a conversation with Mr. Pronger on Tuesday. But that's going to be a great show. Tune in. Ralphie Delavecchio stepping in for me to solidify the best team of the draft. So for myself, for Mr. Sensuti, for Dickhead, and Mr. Brodo back here on the ones.
God damn it!
We're so best friends.
That's
So best friends.
That's the trailer for Birds of a Feather this week.
We are so best friends. So that's it. That's gonna be like, listen, after on opening day when my team, and I'm giving Ralphie co-ownership, when our team takes the field, that's gonna be our hype video as the Fish takes the
Oh
I
God,
love
I
it.
love it here.
Listen, we love you guys. Thank you guys if you tuned in. Yeah, you know, we know it wasn't what you expected, but we're going to give you everything you expected. We normally do. Live radio or live programming, some things you can't control. So for Chrome, for Ritz, for Maddie, for Mr. Brodo back on the ones and twos, we appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Stay tuned. Birds of a Feather coming at you live 8:45 or 9 o'clock-ish tonight, Eastern Standard Time. Until then, have a great week. Talk to you later.